Ohio, Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you on behalf of Ohio's 8th Congressional District for your critical role in helping us pass the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. I've heard story after story about the difference it's making in the lives of hardworking families and innovative companies in Ohio. One such story was highlighted during the President's State of the Union with Staub Manufacturing Solutions. Steve Staub, a friend of mine, his sister, and one of their employees, Corey the welder, were here talking about their expansion plans. And one of the lesser-known provisions, I was just talking to the owner of a CNC business, very competitive niche, a lot of automation there, talking about how much automation is moving their industry. And he was concerned about his ability to keep up with the investment required to stay competitive. And did not understand that we had moved past Section 179 expensing to get full and immediate expensing. So he was very excited, was planning to go meet with his accountant to talk about how he could ramp up that investment plan. That's going to continue to make a difference for companies in our district, and just thank you on behalf of the people of Ohio's 8th District. But I also want to highlight the other good things going on in our economy related to regulatory reform. There are a number of folks that have talked about that, and it would be great to get your support with the Senate getting action on our reforms to Dodd-Frank with the Choice Act. So any thoughts on what we can do to advance the cause there with our Senate colleagues?
I'm cautiously optimistic that the chairman and Senator Crapo and others are going to figure out how we can get this done.
Thank you for that. And the cybersecurity realm, there are a number of concerns. They've been highlighted by breaches at the SEC, disclosed, unfortunately, well after the breaches occurred, and a lot of data that's vulnerable in our financial markets. We've got the consolidated audit trail that is critical for trading irregularities off of algorithms and due to be launched without a CISO. Do you have specific plans to try to coordinate all the functional areas that you provide oversight over to kind of address cybersecurity in this era?
We do.
How is that taking shape within the Department of Treasury? Is it specific to each subset, or is there some macro level coordination?
Well, within Treasury and all of our specific bureaus, we have common guidelines. So the OCC, the IRS would be picked up on that. As it relates to the other independent agencies, we are coordinating with them to make sure that they are following the administration's priorities on cybersecurity.
Thank you. Do you see any need for Congress to pass legislation to allow government agencies such as SEC, CFTC, FHFA, to oversee third-party service providers, particularly information technology service providers? Is there a gap in the regulatory framework to hold folks accountable? And I bring this up because of the consolidated audit trail and the work Thesis has done there. It's taken a long time to get to implementation. There are some remaining cybersecurity concerns, including what is the code written to? How do the people that need to interface with the system? And there's still no CISO in place. Is there a regulatory approach, or is that something that you feel is firmly able to be done by the department?
I think it should be able to, but we look forward to, I'll follow up with you and your staff, because I share your concern on it.
Thank you. And then going back to the economy, we've seen great investment. We've seen the markets respond over the course of the year dramatically to regulatory reforms, to the expectation of tax reform, and now the occurrence of tax reform. It's not like President Obama's friends like Tim Cook somehow forgot to make these big investments during the Obama economy. They're making the investments now because it's a fact. These things are going dramatically upward. So while there was a trend of stagnant growth and stagnant wages, the trend now is towards dramatically increased growth and finally some traction on wages. How do you feel about the outlook ahead for that trend?
I think it's quite positive.
Thank you. And then I think the last thing I would ask is, do you consider China a market economy or not?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Time of the gentleman has